Okay, so as I was saying, it's my pleasure to introduce two wonderful friends and colleagues, our presenters today. So I'll start with Carey Boelter. Carey's been working in the behavioral health field for over 20 years. She serves on the Pikes Peak Suicide Prevention Partnership Board of Directors. Recently, she was the Behavioral Health Program Manager and Supervisor of the El Paso County Sheriff's Office Co-Responder Crisis Response Team and is moving to a position with the Colorado Behavioral Health Administration as the Associate Director for Crisis Services. And Cassandra Walton began serving as the Executive Director of Pikes Peak Suicide Prevention Partnership in 2018. During her tenure, she has also taken on the role of Chair of the Suicide Prevention Collaborative of El Paso County, which is where I met both of these wonderful people. A suicide loss survivor herself, this is an issue close to her heart. So over to Cass and Carey.
I'm guessing you would like us to use the microphone as well.
Yes, please.
And I'm being beckoned to walk up these steps.
No, you can use the podium if you'd like.
Like this mic versus this mic? Sure. We are very grateful to be here today. I have to tell you, the past 6 weeks have been hard, and that's because our community has lost some members to death by suicide, and this is a reality that continues to happen pretty regularly. Our community, on average, loses about 3 people per week, if you put it across a year. That's too many. And so, one of the roles that I play when this happens is that I will often be called out to sit with the family or the loved ones of the individual who we've lost. And the question that is always asked is, why? Why did this happen? Why did they make this choice? And unfortunately, that's not an answer we get to have. And so as humans, what we like to do when we don't have information is we make it up on our own. And I think that that is okay. That's a part of healing. There are many things in regards to death by suicide that we do not have control over. However, there are many things that we do. The decision to take your life is also oftentimes very impulsive. The actual decision. So maybe I've had thoughts of it, it's been on my mind a little bit, and so there's a little seedling of it just sitting in my brain. But the actual decision usually comes pretty quickly, and usually is a moment during which we have no ability, because of our emotional state, to access the rational part of our brain. And so because of that, as communities, we look to our places of faith to serve as places of safety and information, because information is power. When I sit with loved ones who say, "We had no idea," I believe them. I know that this was the last thing that they wanted. And so it's really a simple step for us to take as a community is to talk about prevention, to talk about the things that we can do before the moment of crisis, with the idea that across the day, there could be a number of different things that could push someone to the brink of what they can handle. And so with that in mind, we've created this presentation. Lee, who serves as the chair of the Reducing Access to Lethal Means work group, has helped us develop this presentation. And the purpose of this is to talk a little bit about the things that we can do in order to keep our loved ones safe during their most vulnerable times. Next slide. Oh, yes, please do. To get us started, we will actually listen to Pete's story. Pete has been a program participant since I became executive director. He's recently moved on. He's taken a job in a different city, and I feel really happy for him because Pete used to share his story at almost every event that we did, and that was part of his healing. We call that the retelling phase, right? And he finally got to a point where he said, Cass, I don't think this is who I want to be anymore. I think I'm ready to find out who I'm going to be now. And so we recorded his story so that it could be shared because he feels very passionate that others could learn from what he went through.
Hi, my name's Pete, and I am a suicide loss survivor, ×2. Well, what brought me to this issue? Was the 14-year-old boy who used to wear this jersey. So was a happy-go-lucky kid. He was, well-liked. He wasn't bullied. He had all kinds of friends. He was a great hockey player. I mean, we had just gotten back from a trip up to Iowa for a NHL skills camp over the weekend with his teammate, and he did great. Everything was great. Mental health, it doesn't always have to be professionally diagnosed for there to be a problem. We're all human. We can go through a bad day. We can get to a point where we're thinking irrationally and we're looking at permanent solutions to temporary problems. And when you factor that in with a firearm or a gun, firearm, or whatever, it can be a bad concoction that will lead to a bad ending. I taught my kids gun safety, how to handle firearms. Was an advocate for having firearms. There's a point in my life that I actually took my Second Amendment right and carried. But the biggest thing, back in that life was, the recreational shooting with my family, with my son and my wife. That was a favorite pastime of ours. It was us being together. I was recruited by Pikes Suicide Prevention to take on a role as a firearm safety advocate. And a lot of that was based on the experience I had being a gun owner and also a suicide loss survivor due to suicide by firearm. So the message I guess I'm trying to say, if I had to do it over again, and it would be, I guess, not take a chance. This is a real issue, and this was a real issue that happened to me. So I guess the message is, don't take a chance. Put them away.
Is this on? Oh, there we go. I've had the opportunity to meet Pete, very amazing man. Also many other survivors like him, who now think back and say, why take a chance? And that is why we do some of this prevention work that we do, is to help give information on how we just can keep our homes safer. We don't come and tell you you shouldn't own guns. We don't come and tell you that you should only own 1, but not 5. We just tell you, please store them safely, however many you own. My family owns guns. They are all stored behind locks. Safe by our bed in case we have to protect our family, but that's a biometric. We can get in there, our kids cannot. Safe in the garage for the rest, another safe that cannot be accessed by the children as well. So we own them and we keep them safe, and that's all we're asking is to just hear us out. Sometimes when we come up and we talk about lethal means safety or firearm safety, people are like, you're gonna take our guns away. That's not what we want. We just want you to store them safely because you don't always know when somebody is struggling. Even storing them safely can keep you safe because like Cass said, suicide can be an impulsive decision. And if you have to get through a lock before you make the choice to use a firearm to end your life, that extra couple seconds of having to get through that lock, having to break through that, find the key, or if you store your ammo separate, those things, a lot of people will tell you that they're like, no, I don't want to do that. But had they had just free access, they wouldn't have had that time for our logical brain to catch up a little bit and say, stop. Next slide, please. So this is the Suicide Prevention Collaborative of El Paso County, where Cass is our chair. I used to serve on the work group with Lee, as well as the co-chair of our education and awareness work group. But what we're doing in our community is trying to reduce suicide, and we're doing it through these 6, what we would call pillars. And these are our prevention efforts, and they are around people who feel connected are less likely to want to end their own life. So if we can increase connectedness, education and awareness for our community, and this event is like an education and awareness, and we help people understand that you can help prevent suicide. If we can improve people's economic stability and supports, if they have housing, if they have stable finance, jobs, those things help in reducing risk. Access to safer suicide care, if we can get people access to services and we can help them know where they can go. There's a lot of efforts around our primary care physicians now, starting to ask questions in their offices when people are coming in for physicals or routine medical issues. You might have noticed you're starting to be asked kind of depression, anxiety questions, even though you're there because your back hurts or you sprained your ankle. But they're starting to ask some of those things, opening that door for people to be able to talk and communicate with their providers. Lethal means safety, that is what we're talking about, and keeping our medications, our firearms stored safely so that loved ones, those that are in our home, can't access them in a moment of crisis. And then we also have the postvention efforts, and that's how we support families and loved ones after they've lost somebody or there's been an attempt. Next slide.
When we talk about firearms or when we talk about suicide, everyone wants to know, why is our community so afflicted by suicide? What is it about Colorado? What is it about El Paso County? Because actually our county leads the state in deaths by suicide. And there are a number of reasons. It could be the altitude, right? It could be, do we have enough oxygen to our brains when we are under crisis? Maybe. Is it the military presence? Obviously, they're dealing with a lot of trauma. There's a lot of unwanted moves. These are things that we know to be risk factors, so the answer is maybe. Here's what jumps out to me with every single report that we have every year, is that the most accessed lethal means are firearms. And so, as Carey mentioned, it's the most lethal means that you could access under that time of crisis. Other types of lethal means we might be able to rescue. But if someone chooses a firearm, it's very unlikely that we're able to rescue or provide intervention. And so when you look at these very scary statistics up here, more residents die in El Paso County by suicide involving a firearm than by homicide and motor vehicle combined. Youth who die by suicide with a firearm are most often accessing the household firearm to do so. The firearm is the most lethal means one can access to die by suicide. Here's the one I want you to focus on. Over 80% of individuals experiencing thoughts of suicide demonstrate a known warning sign. And with intervention, 90% of those 80% will go on to live. So if we take steps ahead of time, we know that we can help someone through their mental health crisis. Partially because it doesn't even always present. When I say things like mental health crisis, everybody gets like butterflies in their stomach, they feel overwhelmed, and they're like, oh, this is a huge problem that sounds like it's somebody else's problem. But the most common story is this. There's a working age male, our most impacted demographic for death by suicide. He's under everyday stress. Because of our culture, he's never been conditioned to seek help or to focus on his self-regulation skills. So he's just getting by those everyday stressors the best that he can. Let's say his marriage is under duress because they're dealing with financial stress and they have kids, and one of those kids is having some behavioral issues at school. So every day, this working age male gets up and goes to work, and that's what he's dealing with. He gets a call while he's at work, and his wife, in 2 breaths, says, our electricity is about to get cut off, and little John has to get picked up from school again because of a behavioral issue. What are you going to do about this? I'm so tired of this. She's just responding in a human way too, right? She's under stress. So he goes back, gets off the phone, he's feeling worried and stressed. He makes a mistake at work. His supervisor gets on his case. You're doing a terrible job. When are you going to get your crap together? So all day long, he's being reminded of what a bad job he's doing, what a burden he is to the people around him. Those are 2 of the highest risk factors for death by suicide: thwarted belongingness and fear of burdensomeness. And in one day, all of these risk factors are being felt by this one average working age guy. So, after work, he dreads going home. His buddy from work says, man, let's go blow off some steam, let's go to the bar. They have a few more drinks. He misses dinner. He's been ignoring his phone. So what do you think it's like when he gets home? Do you think his wife is like, I know you're under stress. Let me give you a few minutes to yourself before I jump right into you? No, I'm a wife. I know what this conversation looks like. And so he goes to his office or his basement, wherever he takes his personal space. He sits in those emotions while he's drowning in that liquor that he's drank. He grabs that bottle that's in his office drawer, takes a few more drinks, and then begins to feel the weight of it. Opens another drawer, there's an unsecured firearm. He makes a permanent decision to a very temporary situation. But he doesn't have a pause to be able to change his mind. That is the most common scenario that's happening across our community, where we are losing our fathers, brothers, cousins, friends, our buddies. Imagine if he had opened that drawer and there's a firearm in a gun safe that requires him to go get a key from another room. But also on that firearm is a picture. Of that firearm safe is a picture of his kids, which we call a protective factor reminder. So he looks at that picture, and then he remembers, dang it, I have to go to the kitchen to get the key. He looks at that picture again, starts to walk to the kitchen, has to pass those kids in their bedroom. One of them says, Daddy, can you come and tuck me in? So he goes and tucks her in. He gets to the kitchen. Man, what did I even come into this kitchen for? That's what the story could be. But too often it's not. Next slide, please.
These are from stats from our coroner's report for 2022. Our coroner is amazing. You haven't had an opportunity to hear him speak or see him do any of his presentations. He really does a lot of research in our community around why people are dying And so he does a lot of thorough research around suicide, and these are some of the statistics that he shares. So if we're looking at our deaths by suicide, there was 194 in our community last year. And that's just our El Paso County. We see that of those 194, 119 were by firearms. I think we've made the point that being the most lethal, and it is we've seen some individuals survive and their quality of life after is not good. And so more often than not, though, it is hard to intervene and save them. And even if they are saved, there are a lot of long-term effects. Many are using strangulations or overdose. We see some that have sharp force. Those first couple, though, if we're looking at if we're talking about overdose, we have medication boxes, safety, just like a firearm box that we can keep our medications in our home locked up. Even the person who's taking the medication, if they're struggling, we can keep them locked up from them and then give them their dose for the day. There's so many ways that we can help intervene. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add from this set? It's very depressing, but we do want to show you what the reality is of our community.
Can we make comments?
Sure,
Yeah.
please do.
Tell us about illicit drugs. By the media and my awareness, your awareness is way different than mine, and I appreciate it being here. But illicit drugs seem to be in the media a major river of suicidal behavior. And your chart is showing me I'm all wrong on that. Can you talk about that?
I think we have to focus on illicit drugs partially because we do see intentional overdose from time to time with illicit drugs. It's really hard when the death scene investigator finds an overdose to determine, was this accidental or on purpose? If there is no documented history of mental health or suicidal ideation, if there's nothing on social media or their text message or there's no note left behind, then it's going to be ruled an accidental overdose. And so you won't hear it as often because it's just really hard to determine, and they need some very clear facts to be able to rule a suicide.
Thank you.
The other thing that I want to note is that, in the first slide and this slide, one of the number one reasons that we hear folks say, I don't want to lock up my firearm, is because they don't anticipate that someone in their home will be experiencing a mental health crisis at any time. But the story that I told you before, it's really to try and help you understand how quickly someone can be in a mental health crisis, but also what they're worried about are home invasions. And so we oftentimes will have a police officer or a first responder join us, because what they'll tell you is that a firearm is not a tool of protection unless you are trained and trained to use it under stress. And so even just think about having a water balloon fight. How often, because you're laughing and you're giggling and you're moving around, do you miss your target with the water balloon? Pretty often. I have water balloon fights every summer with my kids, and so many other things get hit with the balloons that we don't mean. And so the reality that we're actually able to use our firearms as a tool of protection, if that's not something that we're consistently trained in, is actually pretty low. Also, home invasions are also pretty low. What's not rare is death by suicide with a firearm. And so again, our media tends to focus on the things that we're scared about. They incite worry. And even seeing numbers like this, what is our brain supposed to do with that, right? We're showing it to you because people often want the numbers. Tell us, is this truly an issue? Yes, it is. However, we will never even have to look at this slide if we're really thinking about suicide prevention in a real way, because suicide prevention starts way before we ever say the word suicide. Next slide, please. I feel like we just hammered this in. And that's partially because so many folks in a firearm-friendly community, which is what we are, and that's okay, struggle to understand the impact that firearms have on any given community. And it's like, if we say it's not a problem, then it's not. So we just really like to show real life statistics so that folks can see this isn't just Cass Walton's opinion. This isn't just Carey Boelter trying to convince you of something, but when we look at what do we need to be doing to prevent deaths in our community, we cannot ignore firearms because of the impact that they are having. Next slide, please.
We're talking about some of the challenges we have in our community, right? We have a culture who sometimes would not even want to hear this conversation because thinking we're going to come and shame them from owning firearms. That's and as soon as we can get in the door and say we promise, please hear us out, right? But that is part of our culture here in Colorado Springs, is very protective of our rights, which is nothing wrong with that. And we want you to protect your rights. We'll protect your rights with you. Please store your gun safely. So getting through that front door has been a challenge. Lack of suicide prevention awareness. If it's not in your home, sometimes it's hard to think about, how does this apply to me? How can I play a part in this? If you don't know someone who's died by suicide or attempted suicide, it can be out of sight, out of mind. You don't think about it, it applies to you. And then you start maybe hearing about your grandchildren, your spouse, somebody knows somebody, or just even keeping your home safe when you have friends, family coming to visit. It applies to all of us. We say suicide prevention is everybody's business, because you never know that moment that you were kind to someone who's been struggling, like this husband that Cass was talking about, come home from a horrible day at work, all of these stressors, and just someone being kind to him. Maybe that was that bartender at the bar just saying, hey man, looks like you're having a tough time. Are you okay? Being seen, those things. And so we want to have more suicide prevention awareness, so you just know, even just being a kind human, you can help make somebody's decision different. We need more training and support for how we address this issue with our family and coworkers. I just recently left the sheriff's office. I worked with a bunch of law enforcement. I'm a clinician, so I'm a civilian. It's okay when people ask me if I'm doing okay, but you ask a law enforcement if they're doing okay, and they're like, yes, I'm fine, I'm great. What do you mean? It's just part of the job. But it took a while for me to feel brave enough to ask, because I knew that they're going to give me this, like, what are you asking me for? Of course I'm fine. It's like, I just want to say I'm here. You just came off this really nasty car crash, or you just had a scene where somebody had died, or you've just had to intervene in a teenager who's attempting suicide. Are you okay? It takes courage to ask people that, because we don't want to be wrong, right? We don't want somebody to be like, why are you asking me that? How dare you? And it's okay if we get it wrong. We can say, hey, I'm sorry. You just look like you're having a tough day, and I just wanted to say I'm here. But that is sometimes scary. And what we try to do is train people, help people feel aware, like, it's okay to make the mistake. Better to make the mistake and asking somebody if they're okay and they're fine, than not asking them and they're not fine. We have a huge stigma about mental health and about suicide. And so not only for men, I'm a clinician, I'm a mental health clinician, and you put a bunch of clinicians in a room and we don't talk about feelings. We'll want to talk about your feelings when we're seeing you, but we don't talk about our own, because there is a stigma around, if we're the helpers, how can we need help too? But then I think about it, I'm like, how can I believe that I can help others if I can't let others help me? But that's my logical mind, right? We talked about sometimes when we're overwhelmed, it's our emotional brain that's talking to us, and the logic is very quiet and whispering, and we have to quiet that emotional brain long enough to get the logic in there, like, everybody needs help. We all need each other. So the stigma, and for men so much too, as Cass noted already, not raised in a way to say that it's okay. You're the man of the house, he's, making the money, he's caring for his wife and children, one who's not doing well. Now the electricity's gonna be turned off, and how does he even have room to say, I'm not doing okay? He's got all these things he has to take care of. And that stigma, as we work a lot on trying to say, it's actually pretty normal to feel stress. It's abnormal to not. It's abnormal to say you don't when you do. And then confusion around what safe storage recommendations and gun control. Totally separate things. We are not talking about gun control. We're talking about safe storage. So those types of things, as you hear that in your community, as you hear some of those misconceptions that, oh, well, you know, I can't tell people I own guns because then they'll think this about me, or I can't, I don't want to go to one of these safe storage types of things because they're really going to try to trick you into feeling bad about owning guns. Try to help share that actually these things are not true. These are a lot of myths in our community that then get spread, not so much because people are malicious and spreading things that aren't true, it's because they don't have the information to share something different. And that's what we're trying to offer here. Next slide.
One of the primary things that we say is that with ownership comes responsibility. That is like a very tested, vetted statement. Because what we did was, in the collaborative, we're able to admit to ourselves, hey, most firearm owners don't want to hear from me. I'm a minority female, and so usually when I walk into a room of firearm owners, these are not people who look like me, right? And so we understand that there should be trusted messengers. Lee is usually one of our trusted messengers, but he thought it would be better to hear first from some guests. And so we decided we would ask firearm owners. So the collaborative put some money together. We had a research company come in and talk to some focus groups. They asked firearm owners, what language would you be willing to listen to? How would you like this to be talked about? And who would you like to hear from? And so we've incorporated that messaging into our presentation with our biggest tagline being, with ownership comes responsibility. And that is because we understand that we live in a community full of people who are caring and who do want to be responsible. There's just a lack of awareness of what that responsibility needs to look like in this area. The other thing that we do at Pikes Peak Suicide Prevention is we are part of the Colorado Gun Shop Project, which means we try and spread awareness across all of the retailers so that as individuals are purchasing firearm-related purchases, they receive information. So in addition to talks like this, we're doing that, and we're really just trying to bring up this issue in every place that we can, because the more people that are talking about it, or even thinking about it, the better off we are. Because firearm safety can look different for different degrees, right? I'm willing to take whatever you're willing to give me. You know, I talked with one man and he said, look, when I go to bed at night, I need to know that my firearm is right there. Great. So when you're not in bed, are you carrying your firearm on you? No. Okay. So why not lock it up until you get into bed? And then for the 8 hours that you're in bed, go ahead and leave it there and then re-secure it in the morning. That could be firearm safety, right? It can look so different depending on what your situation looks like, what your lifestyle looks like. I had one gentleman tell me, I don't have any young kids in my home, no teenagers, it's just me and my wife. And so we talked about what could firearm safety look like for him and what was he comfortable with. And he thought, well, maybe just storing my ammunition separate from where my firearm is. Maybe that's enough. We don't need to invest in huge things because it's just the two of us. Sure, that is a degree of safe storage, and it's better than nothing. So often, firearms are getting stolen right out of vehicles, and that is one of the most common ways that individuals are stealing firearms. And I think to myself, it is really silly to leave your firearm in your vehicle, but it's really common. Next slide, please. Sure. look at my beautiful assistant, Carey. She's going to demonstrate for you what some of these firearm safe storage devices can look like.
Yeah.
Very basic. Colorado law requires this be provided with every firearm purchased at a firearm retailer. So not if someone purchases at like a gun show or a private transaction, but it's a cable lock. And they're very affordable.
Very.
You can get them at Pikes Peak Suicide Prevention Partnership for free.
Sheriff's Office gives them away for free.
The emergency room gives them away for free.
Just a basic. This could be used as a meditation lockbox. This could be used as a firearm safety combination right here. Pick your numbers, store it. Could this be defeated as well? Potentially. It's going to take some effort to pry this thing open. And the time that somebody's trying to pry it open, that's the time we need. We're gonna take what we can get from people. There was one individual who would not give up his home on one of the calls for service that we were on. He said, "I'm not giving up my gun. We don't need you to. Can we store them separately?" Thank you. I could have just took it first. Yeah. That's okay. We said, can you just, it was a shotgun, and I don't know a lot about those types of guns, but it can be disabled and taken apart. So he put one part in one part of the house and the other part in the garage. He still had his gun. He did not give it up. It's still in his home, but he stored it, and then the ammo was in a third place. That's firearm safety.
How does the cable work? What do you cable it to? The trigger area or to a wall?
It can be done a couple of ways. There's directions in the thing. It can go through the barrel, so you kind of have to, the gun is slightly disabled, or it can go through the trigger area. There are a couple different ways to use it.
So you just put it on the gun, not on attaching it to a column?
Correct. It just goes on the gun.
Thank you.
Yeah, it does not need to be even secured to something else. It's just secured on the weapon. And then this is a smaller one, just to show you how small they can fit in the drawer, the bedside drawer, if you wanted.
This is a pretty basic one. I think it has a lock on it, but they have biometric ones where it can be your thumbprint. They have codes that you can use. What we would say about keys and codes are that if you do have young people in your home, I promise you they know where your keys are and what the codes are. You know, we talked to one student and he said, yeah, it's my mom's birthday. That's like the pin to her debit card. It's the code to our bike safes. Like, it's the code she uses for everything. So I would be careful about what code you're choosing and ensure that it's not a commonly known code, which is hard for me because every time my IT guy looks at the 3 passwords that I use for all of my things, he is very judgmental. Because I am that person where my kids know all of my codes.
They do. They know. I've been in people's homes where we've asked, do you have a firearm in your home? We're there because their child is suicidal. There's been a call for service, by the way. That's why we're there. And they say, yes, but my daughter, my son does not know where the gun is. And we will ask, hey, where does mom keep her gun? Or where's dad keep his gun? It's on the top shelf under the blue towel. And then they're like, we thought we were doing so good, but man, kids are just observant. That's what they do. They watch us, and so they know.
Also, it's just like a hobby. It's built into your brain the first time you get left home alone that you must investigate every crevice of that home and find out what is being stored and hidden. I don't know what it, I think it was because I read a lot of Nancy Drew novels when I was little, but I know that I definitely did it. Here is why we do these presentations in addition to hoping to educate each of you who are here today, because we can't do this alone. And because we know that each of you serve as trusted messengers to the people in your life. And we listen to the people that we trust. So engage in a conversation with your friends and family about this topic. And here's why you should do it now. Because it is so much better to do it proactively than to talk about it after the fact, after tragedy has occurred. Because I promise you, every family that I sit with, they didn't think that this would happen to them. No one does. If you thought that that's how your firearm was going to be used, you'd get rid of it. I believe each and every one of us love the people in our lives and want to live in a safe community. And this is a way that we can do that. We have actually a longer presentation that we do that kind of goes through not only the warning signs, but also how do you initiate the conversation. We've not been able to get that into the room with folks when it's also paired with firearm safety. And so we've created this overview presentation, is what we've called it, because it's more palatable. But tragedy is not palatable to anyone. And we need your help to prevent it. Invite us again. Invite us to another group of people. Have us again on another day when you don't do an evacuation, so a lot of you don't just go straight home. I feel really passionate about this for a few reasons. One, because of all the families that I've sat with. And it's especially heavy on my heart because just in this past week, I had 4 bereavement meetings with really sad people. But also because there are people who live after an attempt. And here's what they tell us. As soon as I did the thing, whatever it was, I knew I didn't actually want to die. I knew I wanted to live. A firearm doesn't give that chance. It's too lethal. And so we have to talk about this. It used to be, well, women who try, they don't use the firearm. That's not true anymore. Everyone is using, it is more common for the firearm to be accessed than anything else. And so that's why when we say, what are the things that we are going to put our resources into? What are the 3 asks that we're going to ask the community, right? And here are our asks. Safely store your firearm, regardless of if you think this is something that could happen in your household or not. Take a suicide prevention training if you never have. It's one of our most effective arms of prevention is the informed public. So if we are looking through a lens of prevention, if I know that what I just saw or what I just observed could possibly be a warning sign that someone could be in trouble, then this training ensures that not only can I see that because I am looking through a lens of prevention, I know what to do and I feel comfortable doing it. And I know what resources are available. And finally, talk out loud about your negative emotions. Your negative emotions and your mental health are really intertwined. And how we are able to deal with our negative emotions has a lot to do with how we know to regulate our mental health. And let me tell you, when we ask young people, why didn't you go to one of your trusted adults? They say to us, well, because I believe that they think that I should know what to do. And that's not true. I don't want to be a burden to them. I say to my kids, please, give me a chance. Give me a chance to be burdened by you because I think that that's my role as your mama. That's the promise that I made. But if they look at me and they see that I'm so proud of myself because I'm so competent and I always have my stuff together, then that's who they want to be too. That's what they think I value. And what I value is them in their messiest moment, in their most vulnerable time. In order for them to feel comfortable doing that, they need to hear all of us. They need to see us being messy. They need to watch us get vulnerable, ask for help, and then receiving help. Start with really small things, because we are not a community that has been cultured to receive help. So the next time you're carrying 15 grocery bags and someone says, "Oh, can I help you with that?" Don't say, "I've got it." Why not let them carry one of your grocery bags? Start normalizing receiving and asking for help. Do it in public. Do it in front of your loved ones. Ask them for help. "I'm tired and sad today. Do you think you can sit with me and watch this silly movie? I've been feeling really down. I'd love to go for a walk with you. Could you do that with me so I might feel a little better?" Really simple ways that we could start normalizing asking for help. Is the video on this slide?
Next.
Okay. Next slide, please. Finally, you get to watch a PSA that was created from all of that research that we did. And let me tell you, we wrote this script by committee, and we really loved that process.
Gun ownership, whether it be for protection, hunting, or sport, is part of our culture here in El Paso County. We are proud to live in and serve this community where so many active duty military and veterans protect our American values.
We support and protect your Second Amendment right to own firearms. While we live in one of the best counties in the country, we are sad to know that too many people in our community are dying by suicide. In fact, more people die by suicide using firearms than all other suicide methods combined.
Suicide is often the result of temporary crisis, and once it passes, you or your loved one's risk of death by suicide drops dramatically. And a firearm is far more deadly than any other method used to attempt suicide.
Many people believe that someone who wants to die by suicide will do so regardless of whether or not they have access to a firearm. The truth is that less than 10% of people who survive a suicide attempt will go on to die by suicide at a later time.
In other words, people are more likely to survive a suicide attempt if they do not have access to a firearm while in crisis.
The good news is that there are ways to protect your family. Suicide is preventable.
As a community, we all have a responsibility to care for one another. Do you know someone who is struggling, feeling hopeless, trapped, or in a physical or emotional pain?
Are they increasing the alcohol or drug use?
If so, express your concern and ask directly if they are thinking about suicide. Asking won't put the idea in their head. Listening to them and accepting their feelings without judgment can save their life. That might be all it takes to get them to the next steps of help and support.
Having conversations with your friends and loved ones about suicide involves talking about safe firearm storage.
Gun ownership, whether it be for protection or sport, is your right as a citizen. With that right comes responsibilities. It's our job to protect this community, and we need your help.
Help us ensure the safety of your loved ones by storing firearms in a gun safe, keeping them locked, or storing them voluntarily and temporarily outside the home.
Remember, there is hope. It is our duty as a community to help people who are struggling to find that hope. The following suicide prevention resources are available in our community. Thank you.
Have you guys heard of 988? That's awesome. So many times I've been in a room lately and people are like, "What's 988?" That's our mental health crisis line. You don't have to call 911. You can call 988 and talk to a counselor. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
You can also text 988.
You can, yes.
And
For
you
our
can
young
call-
kids.
You can call 988 for someone else. It doesn't have to be you that's in crisis. Yes.
Nope, that is a federal initiative. Across the country, we have 988. Yep.
So that concludes our presentation today. We're very grateful that you had us. If you are interested in helping us spread awareness about firearm safety, I have materials that you can have. If you'd like a copy of this video to put on a website or to play at a beginning of a training that you're involved in, if you know a firearm safety instructor that might be willing to play it at the start of their course, we would be happy to provide these materials, and they are all for free. So, thank you.